And I would like to welcome to the stage our first group of showrunners, Graeme Yost, Michelle Lovretta, Sarah Dodd, and Simon Barry, and of course our host for the evening, Tim Goodman.
This first group's got it tough. No, actually, the second group does. They're like, is this really going to be an hour?
No, that's quite all right.
Okay, so Graeme Yost on the end is a couple of really small shows called Justified and the Americans. Also involved in Sneaky Pete and like a ton of other shows. Go check out his IMDb. Actually, for all of them, that's probably true. Michelle Lovretta, Killjoys and Lost Girl. All right, yeah. Sarah Dodd, Cardinal, going into its fourth season, or third is about to air, and then its fourth and final is coming up. And Simon Davis Barry. I put the Davis in there this time. Sir Simon Davis Barry. You have a new series coming out on Netflix. Did you know that?
In a year.
Yeah, in a year or two. Warrior Nun. He just got announced that he and Amy are doing Warrior Nun and Continuum and Ghost Wars. Way to stay employed. That's solid. So we're talking about show running series, and we could certainly get into the nitty gritty of putting together some stuff, and we will. But these things tend to go really fast, and we have another group too, and I also want to get some broader questions. But I guess just like really simply, when you're putting together a writer's room and trying to get the best people, what's something that can sort of make or break the writer's room, so the aspiring writers here can learn from that.
Assholes.
Yeah, assholes. Yeah.
Assholes,
Good
definitely
one.
assholes.
Hyper negative people, I think.
This is the breaking part.
I don't.
Yes.
I don't agree with that. I think hyper negative people. No. Oh my God.
That's your thing.
I mean that we were talking about that this morning. It's if you're going to say something negative, you better have an answer.
Yes.
So you're saying if somebody in the room is kind of like being a jerk about something, they better be better than the idea that they're poo-pooing or shooting down?
Yeah, or say, I'm not sure about that, but what if we did this? That can help. Or just to take the showrunner aside later on and say, I've got an issue, I don't have an answer yet, but I'm gonna work on it. But just going, yeah, I don't think that's gonna work.
I think essentially come to play, don't come to be right. You know, if you're going to come into the room, you have to sort of bring an energy, bring a positivity, as you say, bring answers. God bless if you can, and if you can't, at least, bring an ear, listen to what everybody else is doing, and build on it.
And not take it personally.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah.
Because you can take your ideas very personally, and your creative instincts can be something you hold on to very dear, and if you get, not that you have to be shot down in a violent way or a mean way, but if your idea doesn't get, past the first hurdle, you can't take it personally. You have to be able to bounce back immediately, pitch another idea, and not take it to heart, because it's not about you, it's about the show, and everyone's there to drive the same ship forward, Right.
Yeah, I think it's important not to be too shy or too quiet, afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to throw out ideas that are maybe half-baked sometimes, because somebody else will pick that up and run with it and turn it into a brilliant idea. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there, and if you don't have the answer, if you have part of an answer, it's okay.
And how much I guess that's, to me, the curious part is how much do you know as you're putting a room together? Obviously there's some writers in these rooms are more well known amongst you than others. Sometimes you're bringing in new writers or you've never heard of them. How early in the process do you know their backgrounds, or that maybe somebody would be shy, or maybe someone would be, to borrow the phrase used earlier, an asshole? How do you work around that?
Yeah, I think so. There's this dirty secret. Probably it's not really a secret. Is that you get a sort of a pile of money for a writer's room, and you kind of have to budget it. You have to spend the money on tiers of people. So you obviously go after the Amy Bergs when you have some of that money, and then you spend it. It's like a baseball team. You've got your superstar. Now you have to fill out the team, right. And you have a little bit less and a little bit less, and so you kind of have to structure your room the way you would intelligently shop for a sports team. It's best analogy I can think of. Right. But it does kind of define who you put into which category and how you find people, because you're going to have a couple of people who've never possibly been in a room, ever.
Right.
So, and they're going to be at the lower end of the pay scale. And you want to keep your numbers big so that you have a room that's full enough that you have a variety of ideas. You want diversity. You don't want the same 6 people who all have the same attitude and the same ideas. You want all these different perspectives. So that's the first part. I find it's always like I'm thinking about, okay, I'm putting together my playoff team. I have this much money to spend. How am I going to spend it wisely?
I think in Canada, in particular, it's so small that writers talk, right? So we get to know each other, and the more shows you work on, the more writers you meet, until finally it's pretty hard to find a room that you don't know at least one person.
Right.
So somebody will say, oh, I hear your show's going. You've got to check out this junior. She's incredible. So it's often sort of word of mouth, and you'll hear things like they're a power breaker, or they're just an idea machine, or they're great with dialogue passes. So you start to think about the complement of skills.
And you know that before you go into it?
Yeah, it really is building a baseball roster, you know, and I know nothing about baseball, but that sounds like a good
Great analogy, Graeme.
It's good.
That was an
but
awesome
it's like this is a
analogy.
cleanup hitter, but exactly what you're saying. But you had an interesting experience with the new Netflix show, because a lot of it is you just go, well, I've worked with this guy before. I'll see if he's available or she's available. There's a problem to that, which is you're not getting a lot of fresh thought. And what happened on Warrior Nun?
Yeah, on Warrior Nun, I was asked to move the room from. I wanted to do the room in Vancouver. I'd done all my writers' rooms here. Netflix had asked me to move it to LA. So that presented an immediate issue for me, which was like I couldn't actually just go back to the well of people that I normally work with. So I did the next best thing, which was hire Amy to go to the well. And so I really just relied on her connections and her knowledge of people in that community. And it is a community. I mean, when you think of, like, Sarah's right. There's a community in Vancouver, there's a community in Toronto, there's a community in LA. People talk to people. People know firsthand or secondhand or even thirdhand about reputation, about talent. And so you rely on that heavily, because you don't want to start a room and realize late in the game you have to change it up because you've wasted now a valuable week or 2 weeks. So in this case, I knew that I was behind the 8 ball in terms of people I knew. So I called on Amy and I said, look, I think I need you to help me put together the roster. And she was generous enough to actually put the call out. And I mean, we only have a couple of people you've worked with before. Most of them are people neither of us have met. I mean, I hadn't met anyone other than Amy the first day of the room. I just read them, talked to them on the phone.
That puts you in a kind of a, I mean, if you didn't
was
have
terrifying.
Amy, you'd be in a kind of a bind.
Terrifying,
right?
actually. You just don't know where it's like inviting 8 strangers to your house for a 20-week dinner party. If it's bad, it's going to be bad for a long time. And it's hard to ask people to leave a dinner party when they don't want to leave.
Right, and so Graeme, are you in a position where since you've been on a lot of shows, people are coming to you and they know your style, they want to work with you, you have a reputation.
Wouldn't you think so? Yeah. At least I do, and up here, you know. But no, not really. I mean, one thing is that, you know, the governing sort of traits for a lot of showrunners, me included, is fear and laziness. And the fear is that you're going to hire someone who's not going to deliver, and you're going to have to completely rewrite them. Then that's also the laziness. But it means that you want to go back to the same people again and again. And, you know, fortunately for a lot of the people coming off of Justified, they were able to go and have their own lives. And there's a little bit of kind of like, well, you're not going to work with me again? But we had so much fun, you know? And we're in the building with Mel Brooks. Come on. We really were in the building with Mel Brooks. So you try some new writers, and you go, what was I worried about? There's a lot of great writers out there. And you know, you're hoping in those meet and greet things that you're going to be able to figure out who's an asshole and who's not. The lower you go, they've got less experience, so you're really taking a gamble. But boy, that can pay off. There was a guy on Justified, Ben Cavell, who'd never been on a show before, and he literally saved the show for me, because it was so hard to find, even for me, but for everyone, to write like Elmore Leonard, and Ben just got it immediately. And so it was like, well, there you go. I know I'm going to get 2 good scripts out of him.
And is that did you just get lucky, or what are you looking for new people when you're looking at their work? I mean, there's a lot of people in this room probably who are trying to get hired. When you're looking at their work, what are you trying to identify? And including Dennis.
Dennis needs a job.
What are you looking at for? Is it specific to the show you're doing, or are you just looking for somebody different from what you're used to?
I think it's so much now specific to the show, that you're really looking for a certain thing for a certain show. Like working on Sneaky Pete that David co-created with Cranston. We needed humor, we needed sharp plotting skills, and it was hard because every show now is so specific. It's hard to find people that are going to fit right in, but that can be kind of cool too. You'll find someone who writes something completely over here, but you just want to take a flyer on it and see what happens, and it's always a failure. No, it's not. No.
50%. I find for myself that I tend to need one or two people that I believe, either through experience or through on the page, have the same instincts that I have. Because there's a bit of a testing of ideas when you're first putting a show together. You're finding the voice, you're finding out what it is, and I almost find myself sort of looking to them and saying, are we both nodding at this? Are we both feeling this? And I feel, okay, I'm on the right path, but then I also, in that same room, specifically look for at least two people who do stuff I'm shitty at. I'm like, who has the strengths that I'm missing? And it's that balance. And you can't always, certainly in Canada, I think we just have to be blunt. We have some limitations, often in budget, often in terms of who it is that we can bring into the room. There's a lot of amazing writers out here I have never met and will not be able to employ. Because if they're not living in Ontario, we have some restraints. So when you're working with a pool that small, there is the ideal mix, which you are often lucky enough to find, and then there's that kind of chaotic Wild West. All right, shit, what let's see what happens here, and you pull together all the best people that you can, and a lot of times magic comes from that as well. So it's not a science. It's part gambling. It's part best intentions, and then as the season goes along, you figure out who was the right gamble, and if you're fortunate, it's 90%.
And also specific to you, Michelle. You have a certain style. It's very fast-paced and quippy and like
a lot
snarky.
of boobs.
Yeah, a lot of boobs, snarky. Are you somebody who might be coming out of the crowd? That's not everybody can do that. That's not in everybody's toolbox.
Yeah.
Are you trying to find somebody where you say, hey, did you? Because specifically Lost Girl, that's moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So do you say somebody, hey, did you see this? Can you do that? Or how do you look at their work and say, I don't know if this person can make my fit?
I think it's been a balance. I've been an unapologetic genre lover and writer since I'm approaching old as fuck. So whenever it was that period where there was no prestige at all attendant to that, and so from those early days, what I've found is I like people that have a healthy respect for that area, and not everybody does. And it's not about worrying that they're in the room and they're secretly thinking that they're they just took it as a money job. It's more that ideal in tropes. And there's a certain acuity you have to have. You have to understand there's a legacy of what we're doing. And if you don't understand that and you don't know the spin that you're supposed to do on it or why something is feminist or not, then sometimes it can be difficult because, as you said, we're lazy and tired. And so I want somebody that's got that history in their mind. And sometimes it has been hard to have people that have no genre, speaking of the spec fictions, literacy. But I've also learned over the last show that sometimes I intentionally look for people who have, for instance, a comedy background. Because as you say, I want somebody that can kind of jump on board with that voice. So it really is, frankly, on our show, for the longest time, every season was new. Because we have these now smaller seasons and these long waits in between. Yeah. And we don't contract our writers past 1 year. So it has been that sort of thing where, people have to, they have a mortgage, they have a life. And so you're rebuilding a little bit every year. And that's when you figure out, what do I need right now? Do I need a comedy hitter? Do I need somebody who can do a voice pass? Do I need somebody who's really great on set as well, which sometimes has its own advantages? So every year is a bit different.
And you're in a situation where you're wrapping up Killjoys,
Yeah.
right? And Sarah, you're wrapping up pretty soon Cardinal, right?
Yeah,
And
season 4 is going to be the last season.
Right. And
Oh,
then
it is. I didn't know that. Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you.
breaking news, everybody. And then
You
Simon,
heard
you
it
just
here.
talked about putting together your own writing room, right? And Graeme, you've done this enough, and you probably have another project. I mean, I'm sure you'll get Netflix or Amazon or Apple to throw a ton of money at you to put together stuff.
God, that sounds good.
I was
How do you
gonna
get a
say,
ton
that
of
sounds
money?
lovely.
That really
I wanna get a
sounds
ton of
wonderful.
money.
I know.
Yeah, but you got a budget this time, and this time, and believe me, this time I think that Netflix is going to actually send your stuff out. There was a funny. If you don't remember this, Simon was here last year, and he had a brand new show. This is like a nightmare, but you were so great to share it. I said to him, "Hey man, I don't think they sent that show out." And he's like, "What? You guys didn't get it?" And it turns out they.
I found out from you that Sci-Fi had not sent the show out for screeners. Free advertising, no cost associated other than sending a bunch of DVDs out.
Yeah.
And you were the one who broke the news to me that Sci-Fi had just not sent it out.
Yeah. We thought we didn't get it at THR, and it turned out no one got it. So.
Like, you're the place that maybe they should check and make sure you got it, right? That's just if you're going to throw it at something, maybe.
So we got canceled. I guess. My fault? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. No, it sucked. It totally sucked. I feel bad for Dennis mostly because, it's going to be hard for him to bounce back. But I'm doing fine.
Well,
fine.
Is there a difference? So you're starting up. You guys are ending. Is it like I feel like it's a gift to be able to wrap something up, knowing ahead of time that it's not going to be canceled? Whereas Ghost Wars didn't have that chance. I don't know.
Yeah, I love knowing when it's the last season because you can spend some time thinking about how you want to end it. And it's a gift to the fans as much to the writers, too. I worked on a show years ago where we were so confident that we were going to get a 4th season that all of our heroes were in a basement and the bad guys were coming through the windows with the AK-47s. The end.
I love that ending.
Yeah, ambiguity doesn't go well. I know that is tough. This is a really interesting time to be working in television, and maybe I can only imagine for people who make television that it's there's two sides of it because everybody wants in. There's 500 something scripted series, Netflix, Apple. Everybody's got money. It seems like everybody's growing. Hulu's growing. Amazon's growing. On the other hand, it's really, really hard to get noticed. Well, especially if they don't send your show out to critics and stuff like that. But I mean, you know what I mean? So how does it feel like? Do you feel like there's it's the best time because it's like platinum age, or is it just so hyper competitive that it's harder to get noticed?
I don't know. I think there's a weird curation going on where you find your audience very specifically, and that smaller audience in a way can keep a show going that it couldn't have done 5-6 years ago. Now you can actually speak to your people, your crowd, your audience, your fans, and go, this is for you, and it's not for everybody, and we're not going to be selling Mercedes-Benzes or commercials that are designed for the mass market. This is a really curated design show for a specific audience, and I think that's, in a way, liberating as a creator because you don't have to play to the big audience, which is nice. By the same account, though, it's a different kind of success. We're never going to have a day where a show like House, for example, is getting tens of millions of viewers a night in a way that it was like ubiquitously successful because there was 4 networks and that was the show that a quarter of the population were watching.
Right.
I just don't think that is realistic anymore because of the volume of content. But I feel good about. I mean, I'm a nerd, so I think it's great for me as a viewer because I can really cherry pick the shows I want to watch. And I get a lot. I mean, more than I can watch.
Right.
Way more content than I could ever consume.
Well, I think it's interesting that we've got House and Bones in the same house here today. I mean,
Bone House.
Yeah.
This fall on Fox.
Hanson's house. And it was just, I mean, those were so huge. And David still has The Good Doctor, which is a big hit. And it's like, that is such a different landscape. So we'll get to that when they get up here. But Graeme, any thoughts about sort of playing in this going forward and whatever your next project is, maybe playing in a world where your ratings don't matter as much? And how does that free you up?
Well, I think what the public loves to hear is a showrunner complaining that he's not getting enough attention. People really rally behind that. I'm not famous. Shut up. I mean, the basic, I honestly feel, and this is going to sound so rah-rah, but the greatest measure of success is simply that we get to keep doing this. And if we get to keep doing this, then it's fantastic. And not only that, but we get to do shows that were inconceivable 20 years ago. Just absolutely no one was going to be doing Snowpiercer 20 years ago. You know, no one was going to be doing Warrior freaking Nun 20 years ago. And that's really cool. And so that said, if anyone, you know, among us, we go out and pitch stuff, it's strangely not any easier to sell a show. Because part of it is they know exactly what they want, especially with Netflix, you know, and Amazon, where they have their algorithms, and they can well, you better not have any left-handed people in this show because that really doesn't work on our platform. It's like, what? You know, they've got all these strange things, and but we get to work at this time, and I think that's pretty cool.
And I'm going to ask this next group too. You guys will have the benefit of well,
now they know.
yeah, now they know. They're going to get all these rerun questions, but
Let's
also
use all their time. Let's use it.
But you'll also have, you know, you'll have time to sort of think about these things. So they do have a benefit of it going second. But like Graeme, I know you're sort of like your next project, but anybody, like what's your, I mean, you've got one. You're just starting one, so maybe you can pass on this one. I don't know.
Pass.
Maybe Warrior Nun is your thing. But like, well, for the rest of you guys, what is like your dream project to do right now? Because you're in an environment where you might be able to do it.
I'm not going to tell people for free.
You think somebody's going to steal the idea? Is that what you're saying?
No. My brother's out here, and our father, who had a show about movies in Toronto for years and years, he would say, don't talk about it, because his feeling was that if you tell the story too much, you're never going to write it. And I think there's also something that, sort of the energy gets out, and also we're just stupidly superstitious, you know, even though we know that that's not how the universe works. Oh, you talked about that show too much, I'm going to curse you, you know. No, but it does, there is sort of an energy thing you want to hold. That's my long way of saying I have no freaking idea.
I know.
What,
I was
you know,
gonna say,
you know what I'm going to
that's
do
gonna kill
next,
the
Tim? I'm
question.
going to do whatever they pay me to do next, is what I'm going to do.
How about you? You got something that you've like now when you move on from Cardinal that you definitely want to do, or what?
I'm excited about the idea that I really like both network episodic and the shorter run limited series. So it feels like there's a whole world of possibility, and I'd be quite excited to work in either arena. So I've got a couple of things that I'm, you know.
I feel like we secretly all want to do the show we're not suited to do. Like I've been doing genre my whole career, and I just want to do a non-genre show, weirdly, because I want to be terrified again. I want to do something that I'm not equipped to do at all.
I'm terrified.
But weirdly,
every
that
time.
feels so exciting, and I would love to do like the totally wrong show. Like people go, Simon Barry's doing that? What? That's crazy.
Yeah, you got like a rom-com
I
coming
don't
up.
know. I don't even know what it is. I just know it's whatever's the opposite of what I should be doing.
I mean, I think that is kind of fascinating because you can do that, and yeah, well, maybe you should.
Well, I mean, someone pointed out to me the other day that Scott Cooper, who's in town directing a movie, is doing different genres every movie, and I didn't even realize it until he said it to me out loud. I think you told me that actually, that he's now doing a horror movie, and if you look back at it, he's done a Western, he's done a sports movie. He's actually mixing genre. Every time he makes a movie, he does a totally different genre of film. And
Did he direct Hostels?
Yeah.
Hostels?
Yeah, Hostels,
Yeah, he
yeah.
shouldn't have.
Yes, now
There you
we're
go.
getting to it. Now the alcohol's
But
kicking in.
how can that
Okay.
not? That seems really attractive, just as a creative endeavor, to be able to sort of in the. You know, you
I'm
do
so
one thing-
happy for him.
Yeah, clearly.
I had to watch it.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, Scott. I know you
that's
came by,
good.
but I
I
apologize.
thought this
on
was
behalf
TV only in here. We were in a safe room.
So,
I think for me that what I'm grappling with right now, which may just be fatigue, but is the idea that I really crave novelty, and as you say, I like challenges and new challenges, but every television show is kind of the same in a weird way, in the sense of our jobs are the same. We may have a bigger or lesser budget. We may have, you know, a better or lesser marriage with our production partners or studios, but the niceties and intricacies and the good and the bad of the actual occupation are a bit static, and I'm finding myself a bit frustrated with that. Just my makeup. I'm looking for something that feels different. And yes, I'd love to. No, I wouldn't love to throw myself into something I'm not suited for because I'm terrified of that. But even that would be, the content would be different, but the job would be somewhat the same. And I think that's something that I don't know how to deal with. I don't know how people deal with that if they have, 6 shows or 7 shows that they've been fortunate enough to do in their life. Where does the novelty come in, I guess, is what I'm trying to figure out. And I don't have the answer.
But okay, that's actually a good jumping off point. Do you see anything on TV now where you're thinking, where they're throwing the book out and you're thinking, well, shit, if they can do that, because Atlanta is completely different. I mean, they're making stuff. Legion's totally different. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's coming up where, and I want to get to this at some point about directors are definitely moving into have their stamp almost in what is traditionally a writer's medium, and they're taking off and being able to do almost anything. But you can see sort of like, Louis kind of rewrote the book for a while. Master of None seems to have no notes from Netflix. They came out with a black and white episode. They were in, you know what I mean? So it seems like it's out there. Is that something I think you're saying that not just the genre, but the constraints of how television is made, you want to break through that somehow?
Well, I don't think I have the skill set for those things, to be honest. But it's more coming up with the idea of, even if you're running those shows, whether it be Legion or any of the others, the job is still show running. And that's the thing. Like, we have an enormous privilege, and I mean fucking enormous privilege, to be able to make a living doing this. And I don't just mean, yay, we get to do it. I mean, there's so many writers out there who are incredibly talented novelists, and every time I read about them, and this is the bad part of Twitter, every time I read about them, I'm like, these are people who I think should get a parade. They've written a fabulous book, and yet immediately, as soon as they're done that, they still have to try and start their next freaking novel, and they're making a small fraction of what most showrunners make, most TV writers make. So this is a privilege to be able to do that, but it's more, I think, the idea of, if you're looking for a trajectory, and I think I've always had a hunger for that. Every year you're doing something a little bit different, a little bit harder. You're in a new promotion, and writing rooms are tailored for that, because as you go up the ranks, you're like, oh, I'm in editing now. Oh, now I get to see what the set is like. And then I just feel like there's a bit of a plateau. And you may get more prestige, you may get, any of those things, but the nuts and bolts. And I think that's something that's really fascinating to me, that there's like a graduation, and you graduate towards show running, and then you show run. You know what I mean? If you're fortunate, you show run. But there doesn't seem to be, certainly in Canada, a next tier where you're like, that's your next challenge. And that's interesting to me, and also just mildly terrifying as well.
Mm-hmm. And Sarah, you're coming from something where, I mean, would you be comfortable switching genre, or anybody actually, switching genres and doing something more like Michelle does, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the nice thing about building a career as a writer in Canada is that you kind of have to hustle and do a bit of everything. So my resume is a dog's breakfast of sci-fi and animation and kids, and I would definitely do any of those things again. I mean, it's fun to play in different arenas with different worlds, and if there was an amazing kids show, I would consider doing it again. I never close any door that way.
Interesting. Well, these 4 are going to be on the spot. You guys will have a chance to think about it. But since Graeme killed the whole notion of telling us what your next project is for fear of it being stolen, thank you. For each of you, and I'm going to make you answer this, that like if you could reboot something, because that's like you see. I think there's definitely like a nostalgia thing definitely going on all of television. But if you could reboot anything that's been done,
No question.
what would you do?
Beachcombers.
That was my answer. Wait a minute.
Man. So 3
Hart?
of you want to do
Hart
you're going to do
worked
it?
on Beachcombers.
I know, I can't get over that.
Yeah.
But it's in space, right?
With zombies
Yeah.
and Queen Elizabeth. So it's really strange.
Sign me up.
Okay. So you're going to go with
Okay, so that is a joke answer, and yet at the same time, there's 2 versions of that. One is you just do this great show about the flying around British Columbia, and you could do it now with a budget, and it could look really cool. But I can also imagine someone pitching it. This time it's going to be gritty. Right? We're really going to get inside what makes a beachcomber a beachcomber. It's like, oh,
Relics
shut
a
up.
heroin addict.
Yeah, exactly. There's a
And a
dark
murderer.
history.
Well, in all fairness, outside before we started this, your eyes did light up when you were joking with Hart about beachcombers. But there's a kernel of an idea in
I
your
asked
eyes.
us that we would join hands and all agree to do it together. And no one wanted to hold my hand. But
So Michelle, any series that's been out, not yours, it's something you could either like
mine, like reboot mine.
yeah, you can't do your own. You can't do
was shit.
Lost
Let me try
Lost
again.
Boy. You can't do that. You have to do like if what would you do?
Simon and Simon.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it about Simon and Simon that you? But was it going to be with women this time or what?
No, I like the dudes. Like I mean, obviously I like the women. I like everybody. So it's, but I liked the brother aspect. That era had such fun with the television that they were, the stories they were telling, and they'd have their occasional very special episode where something bad happened.
Right.
But just that pure joy. I love happiness. I love joy, and I love being able to escape into television that isn't gritty and grimy. And that really was, I think, that voice at its best.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that breaks you out of your genre thing you just talked about because Simon
Yeah.
Simon
Well, no,
is
they're
not.
kicking ass and they're shooting shit. So I mean, like that's also my heart home. You know what I mean? And there's like cowboy hats and chaps and all sorts of stuff. So it's a good combo, and I think it should live again.
Nice. Okay. Sarah?
I'm racking my brain. There have been so many reboots of things that I felt, really? Do we need that again? Could we not?
Like Fuller House?
I don't want to slag any show, but I feel that sometimes, that there must be new things that are being pitched that are not being accepted, and instead we're going to remake this. So there's nothing that I can think of. If I could go back in time and get staffed on a show, I would have loved to have done Buffy.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
It's the hardest question I've ever been asked.
Yeah, I know. See, that's why this group gets the.
I'm a TV junkie. There's so many. It's sort of hard to pick. Honestly, it's hard to pick one. And a lot of the ones I love, they've attempted it, and it's been a disaster. So it's like I don't want to spoil the nostalgia.
I know you got one in there, though.
I honestly, if
Airwolf.
no, not Airwolf.
Wow, that's really
No.
going back into the.
That's good.
Wow.
Airwolf's a good one. I don't know. There's some. I grew up. I spent a little time in England when I was a kid, and there were some British shows by Jerry Anderson. One was UFO. There was Space 1999. Those were kind of like. I feel like those are shows that could have a reboot in a way that, with technology and storytelling now, they were a little bit kind of, ordinary, I guess you could say, in those days. But I think that I'm just having a nostalgia stroke about shows I was a little kid watching.
Well, this is also them. They get the benefit.
Yeah,
to think
I
about
think it would probably be something like from my early childhood where I sort of got into TV. Earliest memories of TV. I mean, when I grew up, I was watching Doctor Who in black and white. That's how old I am.
And it's still going on.
It's
So
still
that doesn't
going
need
on,
to
so I
be
can't even
rebooted.
reboot
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that would probably be maybe an old Jerry Thunderbirds live action. Yeah.
Oh my God, Thunderbirds live action.
That'd
Somebody
be
somewhere
awesome.
just
That's even
said,
better than Beach.
And with puppets at the same time.
and with puppets. I don't make television, but I want to tell you, I would watch the hell out of somebody one of you guys redoing The Courtship of Eddie's Father.
Wow.
Let's make that done. Let's do that. Yeah.
I think David Shore could get that show made.
Yeah. I mean, a contemporary version. I can totally see it. All right. So back to what regular television that you're making. When you're in the writer's room, do you ever, because when you were talking about a little bit about constraints, Michelle, is there ever a time where you're in the room where you kind of like, any of you feel like you've lost the spark of why you were doing it in the first place?
Every day, all the time? Does that count? I'm a fraud.
Yeah, well, that. God, every day. There was a time on toward the end of Justified where I just said to some of the other writers, I was like, God, I'm getting tired of this show. Raylan's got to go down to Harlan and meet another new interesting character and have an interesting interplay with him, and then slap him around and shit. And you just that's a time where it's like, well, it's time to end the show. And luckily, we were able to do it on our own terms. But
They were so good, though, those villains.
Oh, but at a certain point, it's like they're diminishing returns. And so we got to end it when we wanted. David and I have an interest in this show, Sneaky Pete, and we're both not working on it anymore. So now we want it to go forever. We don't care if it oversteps its limits, if people get sick of it. If it goes 12 seasons and people say it's horrible, that's okay.
Because it's someone else's problem.
And it's our money.
Passive income. Yeah.
Well, I guess I've been unfortunate in that I've never been on a show that's gone longer than my interest. So shows I've really been enjoying have been canceled, or one-season wonders. So no, I haven't had that experience. I find that there's something interesting in every show, and the camaraderie with the other writers in the room. I've just been really lucky.
And what you?
I answered the question
Okay,
every day, every hour, every minute. I love what I do, though. So, in a weird way, it's you serve you convince yourself every day that it's all gonna work out great. The show's gonna get, on the air. It's not gonna get canceled, and you're not gonna get fired. And you just keep repeating that weird mantra in your head. But at the end of the day, what you remember is the experience of making it, not the show. Yeah. I mean, I already have great memories from our writer's room, and we've only been up for 6 weeks, but we were in the room and we were discussing genre and movies that were super influential, and it turned out 3 people in the room, all millennials or Gen Zs, had not seen The Thing by John Carpenter. And we stopped the room cold an hour later and we watched The Thing because those kids needed to be educated. And they got educated because we were referencing The Thing for weeks. And then we were like, you haven't seen The Thing? We should have spoken. I didn't want to say. It's such an important, because we were obviously diehard Thing fans. So we had to literally stop the room and watch The Thing so that the 20-somethings could get up to speed. And then all the references made sense, and we could sort of show a different side of genre that was, that had a little more, depth and grit than just the superficial stuff that, and it was great. It was like a wonderful memory. I'm going to carry that memory probably more than, anything else.
Were they blown away by that?
Blown away. It was so fun to watch them watch it, and how they reacted to something that was, 40 years old, 30 years old, but still holds up on so many levels. Like, the writing is impeccable, the direction is fantastic, the acting is great. I mean, it's genre, but it's genre that doesn't know it's genre. It's not treating itself like a sci-fi movie. It's actually treats itself like a very serious movie, and it's just a great reminder of where genre can go.
I wonder if that goes back to that earlier question we were talking about, like the younger writers and not knowing them because they're new. Were they just not speaking up because they didn't want to be fired, that they didn't know what the thing was?
No, not in our room. No one's getting fired for that infraction. There are other infractions.
And did you feel like they were more motivated after they saw it for their scripts they're writing now?
I think they thought they understood us better, maybe. I think our crazy love for it. I think that it was more just to fill in, because so much in the room is referential. We all have a shorthand, and you use it all the time when you talk about tropes, when you talk about what you want to do, what you want to avoid. And so these examples of famous movies and TV shows that are kind of these classics in a way are used as a way to communicate. We use them because it's much easier to communicate that way than it is to go into this long explanation. So we'll use a beat, and so if someone doesn't speak up, they should, and that's for everyone. If someone's referencing something you don't know, there's no embarrassment, I think, in saying you haven't seen it, because maybe your showrunner will stop the room and screen that movie for you that day, and that'll be a fun day.
What is the part about your jobs that you guys are doing that's like the part where if you didn't have to do it, you'd be happy not to do it?
Well, speaking for myself, not going to North Bay, Ontario for 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
For me, I actually enjoy all aspects of it. I think going on set is my least favorite, only because usually I'm on set when, and I'm sure this is the case for all of us, I have a shit ton of other stuff I really should be doing, and I can't write on set. So it cuts into that. I think my least favorite part is that all of these favorite things are done in tandem. and I find that enormously exhausting. And I would love to show run, and I would love to head write and find a way to do them separately on the same show. Like for 6 months, just do one, and then for 6 months do another, which, as I hear, is possibly what happens when you do your limited series. So that is somewhat appealing, the thought that you can kind of get all of your scripts done and prep them and do it in a short order. But yeah, it's having an overfull bounty of awesome things to do and no more than 24 hours in which to do them. That's the part that's my least favorite.
We were talking about it this morning, the management aspect, managing writers, working with the actors, studio, network, all of that stuff. And Fred Golan, who's a writer I've been working with since Boomtown, he said that's what we get paid for, the writing we do for free. Mm-hmm. And I kind of agree with that. So I'd love, and being in the room. Being in the room is, to me, the best part of the job. The set that's a time vampire. And yeah, you're just always looking at your watch, when can I get back to the room?
I hate it when you get bad notes.
Oh,
I really get depressed, and I hate bad notes. I
that
hate
might
when
change on
someone
Netflix.
doesn't
Do
get.
they even give notes on Netflix?
They do. They give notes, but sometimes a note will cut you to your to the bone, and you'll be like, oh, like it just seems like insurmountable sometimes. I hate that part probably the most.
I'm pretty thick-skinned with notes. The notes that I hate, though, are the ones that are right. I hate when they're right, and I'm like, shit, I know, that's a really lousy act out, right? That's bad, but I don't have anything, and if they hit you where it hurts, it's not necessarily sensitivity or ego, it's work. You're like, yeah, that's going to take me time to figure that one out, because you don't want to duck them.
Interesting. And go ahead. Yeah.
Well, even worse, I hate how I behave sometimes getting notes. It got so bad that I was working on a show, Falling Skies, between the first 2 seasons of Justified, and I was so bad on a notes call that Daryl Frank called up and said, "Yeah, from now on, we're just going to give you written notes." It's like, it was great. It was a great result, but I was such a dick to, and I wasn't sort of playing. No, I was just cranky. And because when you get the notes, I always sort of feel, when I first read them, these are the stupidest notes that have ever been written. And then within 3 days, it's kind of like, man, we can give this one a try and that one a try. And hey, there's always something in there. The line in the room often is the note behind the note. Yes. That, there's something that's not working. And so they're not really all idiots.
That's interesting, because you do hear a lot of stories about where the note is a bad note. I mean, Michelle.
We've gotten bad notes.
Yeah.
And David and I have worked with someone who gave us a lot of bad notes. But anyway.
Yeah, that must be kind of maddening. And is it because they're not getting it, or they're
well, no,
watching,
because
or what?
in a way you can just say no. We're not going to do that, because that's just a bad note. It's the ones where they are right or kind of right or right adjacent, and it's going to be, again, fear and laziness. Now I'm going to have to go back and work on this.
The note behind the note, that's great to know. And also a right adjacent is excellent. I love that. So are you guys able to, I'm thinking I already know the answer to this, but are you able to watch anybody else's show in the current environment and see whatever the other people are working on in the TV world?
Do we watch TV? Do we?
And if so, like what are you seeing, and what are you like, oh shit, I didn't know I could do that, or that's a good take on that genre?
Yeah, I think there's so much to watch. It's frustrating because I keep hearing about shows that I don't have time to watch. That drives me crazy. But yeah, I think it's literally all I do when I'm not working is probably watch TV.
I tend to not read or just leave it there. I tend to not read. She said with pride. I tend to not read or watch anything within my genre when I'm working, just because I find that I don't. You can have bad reactions. You can watch something and be like, damn, that budget is so sweet, or envy, or you know what I mean? Like all of that stuff. And I don't want to be polluted in that way. Or I'm always just afraid that some idea will worm its way into my head. So usually the scant period of time you have after post, I try to run out and like gorge. I binge everything that I can. And God bless, the current models and Netflix and what have you. It is easier for me to be like, okay, shit, what did I miss? And go through and watch them. But yeah, there's like an embargo for me for about 9-10 months.
I think it's good to watch other, like you said, I try to avoid genre while I'm working, but I love watching the reverse of what I'm working
Yes.
on. Like anything that is completely different in a way that I know I'm not competing with,
Yep.
and will fuel me with a sense of like, oh, there's so many colors in the spectrum of storytelling that I don't have to be keeping my brain in one gear. I can have all these, and I think you need to be reminded always that you can do a lot of different things
Yeah.
on the page and on the show that aren't necessarily in the box that you've built for yourself. And I'm grateful for that, because I think it has nothing to do with our show, but at the beginning of Warrior Nun, we watched End of the Fucking World, which is not genre, but it's genius in so many ways. And its voice is so clear. And I just wanted to inspire everyone the way it inspired me, for anyone who hadn't seen it, just to remind people that, good storytelling doesn't have to be loaded with artifice and conceit. It can be just like really good, honest character study. And that for me is like essential. It's like the fuel that keeps me going.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's also like when we were speaking about Patriot, or Killing Eve, or those things that I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of people that are killing people and they're also having fun, and it's great music and funny. So I'm like, okay, good. I'm eating that. But it's not within my actual current wheelhouse that I'm, in terms of genre that I'm working on. But you're right, it's got those things that are sort of relate to what you're doing. They have maybe a voice or a tone that on an unconscious level reminds you when you watch those. And I don't know about anybody else, but for me, I love watching a good trailer. Like when I'm trying to like get into my zone, I'm like, I will just hit like 10 years of sci-fi trailers. And it's like, it's diluted or broken down to the best moments, and it's got that kick-ass soundtrack, and you're like, yeah, okay, I can do this, and it gets you back in, right? So that I'm finding I will sort of seek out. But anything longer than that, no. That's it.
That's interesting, because I'm sort of fascinated by that, and mostly fascinated what creators would think when they look at that. Because again, for using The End of the Fucking World as an example, what they got done in 18 and a half minutes is phenomenal. That's essentially a drama, and they're getting it done in 18 and a half minutes. It's kind of stunning. But then also maybe on the level of like looking at like the first season of Mr. Robot, where Sam Esmail, who had never done any television, all of a sudden wants everything, he wants the composition of the frame to be completely different than anything that the crew had ever done before. And then when you see that on television, you're like, oh, that's completely different. And I wondered if you saw those kind of things outside of what you do and then thought, oh, things are changing, or I might want to try that.
Yeah, I saw that with Robot, pushing faces right to the edge of the frame, and my thought was, never ever do that again. That is so annoying. And stop that. That's what I thought. But I will say, it's funny. I don't watch stuff that is in the same genre. In a way, you have a writer's room that's very hard. And because I'd start to pitch something on Justified, and they'd say, yeah, they did that on Breaking Bad. I'd say, shit, that's why I don't watch it. I love to watch comedies. I was at a writer's thing this past weekend, and I saw 2 episodes of You're the Worst on FX, and it's now my favorite show. And that's all I've seen is 2 episodes. But a couple of years ago, Fleabag was my absolute favorite show.
Fantastic.
And that does give me that sort of that hope feeling of like, wow, you can do something. Well, you have to be a genius like her, but that was really inspiring.
Yeah, I love that quote. Don't do that ever again. Wow, you're gonna sit and I want to see your face when we talk about directors, and because Sam's a director, and what he's doing in his next show is probably gonna annoy you. But we have before we switch panels, we have I'm told a couple of minutes to have a couple of questions. So let's Amy Berg from Counterpart and Warrior Nun now. Also a big Warriors fan, so she's from my area. Gotta love that. Graeme Manson from Snowpiercer and Orphan Black. Dennis Heaton has a new series coming out on Netflix, The Order. You may have heard of a show called Bones. It's Hart, Hanson. Also Backstrom and Judging Amy and Traders, and don't forget Guitar Man. A bunch of stuff. Thank you. He's got a long one. Beachcombers. One of the bigger hits on broadcast television right now, The Good Doctor from David Shore. Also did a show you might have heard called House. Sneaky Pete, Battle Creek, tons of these. And we're here.
Michelle. You owe me $100.
That seriously hurt. And I don't know what the point of it was either.
There was a bet.
So apparently she hates me enough to spend $100 to hurt me.
That did look like it
And
hurt,
you apparently
actually.
hate me enough to do it for $100.
No, that was good. I'm just going to flip over the back of the stage and recreate the first season just for continuity, in case somebody wants to get that one. All right, you guys, so you've heard some of the other questions. I actually want to pick up where we left off, because we have a really interesting mix here, but Graeme's notion that please don't ever do that again from Sam Esmail's Mr. Robot and the framing and the concept of like what's out there. I kind of wanted to talk maybe about like directors. Television's always been a writer's medium, and now you're starting to see things like Maniac on that just came out on Netflix, which is, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's clearly they're having the director and his vision take precedent almost over the story. The visuals are key on that. And then also in November, there's going to be a new series on Amazon that has Sam Esmail again doing it, and I can tell you, having reviewed it, he takes aspect ratio changes where it's 16.9, and it flash forwards 4 years from 2018 to 2022, and he goes to 4.3 box, and it's you're very, very aware of it. So
I'm glad Graeme's not on here to tell us how much he hates that
yeah,
idea.
I think if he didn't hear that, he was
Let
gonna,
David handle this one.
Yeah.
Graeme.
So I mean, yeah. So David, start with that. I mean, is it like that's very showy, but it's also a very director thing? Is that where we're going, or what?
I hope not. No, it's every now and again you'll go and you'll watch a cut by the director, and he'll have some amazing shot, and you'll be watching it and you'll think that's an amazing shot. And I don't want to be thinking that's an amazing shot. I want to be telling the story in an effective way, and I want the director to bring something to that, but that's not about aspect ratio. Right. It might be about where somebody's framed in some way, but as soon as I'm thinking of the direction, I'm no longer thinking of the story, and I don't want that. So yes, it's annoying. Don't do that. Yeah.
I mean, TV is about the journey of characters throughout seasons. And I mean, if the focus is on the visuals and not on the people on screen, you're going to have a problem maintaining an audience, because really it's the investment comes from the people that you're watching, not from the tricks that you're showing off. I find anyway.
I'm going to sound like Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino. Do you want television to go in the same direction that film has gone, which is basically guys in costumes ruining cities? If directors take over, it will go that way. And then maybe writers will take over film. I don't know, but it seems to always one group should be in charge of one of the disciplines, and then there will be balance in the universe.
The auteurs are coming.
Right,
We just got that. We just like rescued. We got our television space from that era of the auteur director, where none of us could get indie features made. So we switched to TV, and TV suddenly got cool, and now here they're coming. But that said, I always rely on a strong producing director.
Oh God, that's true. Yeah, I think of the showrunner as the series director, so that's my job. Right. You know, an episode director comes in, you know, they have their week of prep, they have their 7 days of shoot. Half the time they're showing up 2 days late. You know, they're leaving before their edit's done. Right. And, you know.
And that's your fault.
It's my fault. Yeah. It's totally my fault. I'm a terrible person. And, no, I am Hart. And, you know, and it's like, hey, that's great. You got a beautiful shot for your demo reel. I'm really happy for you. Now I have to go into the room and cut it into my show. So.
Really?
Yeah. It's, you know, and like when I work with the good directors, you know, they're the ones that I keep going back to, because they're the ones that work with me, and the ones that, you know, that don't work with me are the ones that have like 1 credit,
Yeah.
and then you never see them again, like Simon and Barry. So
Well, I love it. I love the spontaneity of VIFF. Well, falling off stage, stuff like that at VIFF, because Graeme was out of the room and he comes down. He's got popcorn here, and you missed our question. You missed it. I just basically told you that you don't know this, but Sam Esmail has another series coming up where he switches aspect ratio from 16:9. It's coming in November on Amazon. Switches aspect ratio from 16:9. And
You're ruining his popcorn.
They flash forward 4 years, and he cuts it to 4:3.
That's great.
I just wanted to make
I have never heard anybody say I will watch a show because did you see what they did with the aspect ratio?
Yeah. So,
Well, now they will.
but to my point, I mean, that's a little bit
Critics
worrisome,
might
right?
love it.
No,
but
I don't.
Nobody in the
I,
audience is interested.
I don't think they
Don't
do.
antagonize Tim.
No,
Hey,
no,
who
no.
said boo when he was announced?
I also said yeah. I said
He said
both.
boo and yeah. You covered both bases. But I mean, it is actually a worrisome thing on my end too, because it seems like it's taking television is about the story. Amy just said that. I just wanted to make sure Graeme was caught up, and I wanted to see his heart go up. But you're starting to see it more and more. And are you guys worried that some of these outlets that you might be working for are saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to bring in, the next guy who's in a direct Bond." Of course, he was made this before he was going to do Bond, and it's going to be this really showy directorial thing over 10 episodes. And where's the story?
No, because it'll fail. If they do the story well, it'll succeed. But if it's just what you described, it will fail. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it. And then they'll blame the audience for not getting it. The audience isn't getting it because it's not TV's about storytelling. Storytelling is about storytelling, right. And that's all we do.
Right. So let's get back to that. And I'm going to start with you guys in the end, because both of you have made 2 or more of the biggest hits that have ever been on American television, certainly in the era that it was. And if you go back to 3 channels, you might have gone up a couple 20 million or so. But that era is shifting out of it, and rules are changing. Is that a good thing? Or you guys, would you, like, for example, David, would you prefer to, instead of working at network, to be able to go to someplace like Amazon or Apple, for God's sake, where they're saying, you know what, we're going to give you 10 episodes, 12 episodes, 30, whatever you're going to do, and make it, and I don't care if anybody watches it. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Or just something you might be interested in, maybe is a better way to put it.
To be honest, not. I mean, I get the attraction of that, and so I understand that. But I've done network TV, and I've never not been able to tell a story I wanted to tell. There's certain limitations in how I tell it. I can't swear, which is annoying, and I can't show side boob. And I know you're all about the boobs. You were saying I wasn't paying complete attention to the first panel, but I did catch that. It's the other thing I did. It's the only point in telling stories is to tell them to somebody, and so it's maybe so. But telling it to millions is better than telling it to 50. And I want to tell it to. I want my voice heard by a lot of people. Having said that, you're absolutely right that. The goal is to have as much of an audience as will allow you to stay on the air. That is all. That really is it. Because I also don't say if I do this, I'll get a huge audience. I never know it will get a huge audience. You tell the stories you want to tell, and you hope you get an audience. And so it doesn't matter where I am as long as I can do that.
I'm more torn than David, and he has had to listen to me whine for about 2 years now about this exact question. Why work in network TV if you don't have to? You excuse the language, but I've got fuck you money from Bones. I can do whatever I want. And poor David, I keep turning to him and saying, what do I want to do? Because he seems to enjoy 22 episodes a year of really working hard, and I'm not sure.
Enjoy is.
Yeah. I'm
seems
trying
really
to,
happy,
I'm
so-
trying to enjoy myself to some degree, but I still have a network show in development. I'm not sure if I want it to go. Now I'm turning everyone into my therapist. But I will tell you, as I said at breakfast this morning, when someone says, "Hart, we want to help you do your passion project. Tell us your passion project." I tell them my passion project, and they go, "We're not doing that." But we would love a procedural out of you of 22 to 24 episodes. And that's by the way, oh, good, I'm going to go get a meeting at Netflix. Oh, that's interesting, whatever you're talking about. How about we could really use a procedural? Now I'm sorry, I'm just whining.
No, I mean
But
that's fascinating to me because you have something there, but you are technically free to make a new show. So you could take Amazon's money or Apple's money. Are you now saying that because of all these past amazing successes that they're looking for procedurals as well?
They would like that out of me. They would like, I'm sure you've heard this all the time too, there's only so many of the old farts who can do network show running. That many episodes and get a big audience. There's only a few. Not to mention that there's only a few people who will do that. I think you're it. Those who have a choice. No, there's Shonda Rhimes and and other
Shonda
people.
just went to Netflix, right?
Yeah, she went to Netflix, but they. I mean, my guess is that they're paying her $300 million to make a show that a lot of people will watch. They're not asking her in to do end of the fucking world. Right. I'm just guessing from my own experience. But I think about this all the time. And poor David has to, whether he wants to or not.
Yeah, Dennis.
Yes. I don't know.
Well, how about for the rest of you? What is like an ideal number of episodes now? Because we were talking about sort of episodes.
10 is
15.
great.
10, yeah.
10.
Yeah, I've been doing 10 the last few years, and what it allows you is the time to sort of get the scripts where you want them to be before you start shooting, which you don't get in a 22 episode season where you start a writer's room and then 6 weeks later you're shooting. I can't imagine going back to that. I mean, I left network a long time ago, and I can't imagine doing it again because life's too short.
Well, to complete my answer, I didn't realize I wasn't complete, but there are things about cable that I do find attractive, and one is not having to deliver an episode at 42 minutes and 43 seconds every single time. And the other is the number of episodes. We're doing 18 on The Good Doctor, which is 4 better than 22 and 6 better than 24. It's just better.
18 is almost half of 22. It's like a marathon.
Well,
there's a wall, and it's around 17 or 18.
Yeah. But 10 is better, and I guess 0 is ideal from that point of view.
But a check for 24.
But yeah. But when The Good Doctor became successful, and the reason we're only doing 18 is because Freddie Highmore insisted that he wasn't going to do 22, and so it was a concession by Sony and by the network. And then they came back and said, "Hey, you're having fun, right, Freddie? You want to do a few more?" And I got on the phone with him, and we talked it through, and he asked a very telling question about 2/3 through the call, which was, well, actually, it was really the end of the call, effectively. He said, "Will the show be better because we do 22 instead of 18? And it's an easy answer. It's not going to be. We'll produce more, but it's not going to be better.
Interesting. Yeah. And the theory is too, right? I mean, you can do better work in shorter amount of time, so you get allotted more time to think things out. You're not on this crazy 22 episode pace where you're running through. So what about like a new series? Well, all three of you guys are starting new series on this end. So, let's start with Snowpiercer. I mean, you've come out of successful Orphan Black. You're doing this thing, and are you thinking like 10 is the ideal amount? And what was the new challenge for you to be able to do this? I mean, it's going to be on TNT. What were some of the things when you were ramping up for this? And I also, just particularly yours one, I'm going to add this on top. Was there a separate level of expectations because it was like kind of a cult hit movie?
Yeah, there was. And I mean, I was a huge fan of the movie, and really, when Snowpiercer came up, I was looking to take a break. I was looking like to try and make an indie film that might take a year to get off the ground and do it slow. But it was, something that I really loved, and that is that elemental, existential sci-fi. And there was no question. It was 10 episodes, and it was a hour-long pilot. And I could almost see the pilot talking to them in the first meeting. So 10 seemed right. I'd love to try 6 at a limited series. And just like, how about I give you another one in 2 years after that 6? But again, it's just, it feels manageable, 10, and there is a rush in a first season and getting something off the ground that it's like, it's just that rush and that adrenaline and that keenness you have for the story. I think you have a lot of energy in the first season. So 10 seems manageable and not like a mountain. Yeah.
And Dennis, what was your experience when you, because both you and Simon got handed this like full season orders from Netflix to do it for the order? You were telling me earlier it was a whole new experience. So enlighten us.
It was. I mean, working in the Canadian industry where you're pitching the Canadian broadcasters your entire career, and it's you hand in a script and the broadcaster says, "This is great. We'll talk to you in 8 months." And then the 8 months go by and they're like, "Oh, right, we got to read that." There's a very sort of straightforward process. They have their schedules to meet and stuff like that, and you end up playing this waiting game. And then I get involved with Netflix, and it's like, here's a pitch document. That's great. You're going to series, and it's like, what? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so I'm writing a pilot script. They're like, no, you're putting a room together and you're writing 10 episodes. And, you got to get the first 2 approved before we'll officially greenlight, but get to work kind of thing. And I was like sitting there going, shit, I better get started. And they were changing every model of what I understood. So it's like, I get told this. I'm like, okay, well, I better write a pilot script before this room starts. And they're like, no, have Christmas. Start the room in January. Break the pilot with the writers. And we'll just go from there. And you're like, okay. And for like the first 6 months, I kept expecting like this to be a prank. Like that, Chad and Mike were going to be like, fuck you. There's no money, and it was going to be like, oh, okay. And then, everything about the process had to be rethought. I didn't have commercial breaks anymore, right? So, we started, when I started thinking about the show, I was like, okay, I got to have a tease. I got to have 5 or 6 acts, And it's like, you have that sort of, moment where you're like, no, I can do this in a tease in 3 acts, and we're not even going to send the scripts in like that. We're just going to send in, 48 pages of script, and that's what they're going to read, and that's what we're going to do. The entire sort of model was being rethought as we were going along.
They didn't wait till the second episode to tell you, oh, by the way, it's not 5 acts, it's 6?
Yeah. No, well, they did that on a couple of shows for me, so.
That's why I left.
Yeah.
The last 3 shows have all been 10-episode series, and I can deliver anywhere between 42 and 52 minutes, and it's just lovely as fuck. Yeah. I gotta tell you, guys on the end.
Yeah.
When they say to our side.
When they said cut for the story.
Yeah.
Right. And they were like, we think of an hour episode as something that's over 35 minutes. So I was like, oh, okay. And still like waiting for, something to happen.
Yeah, it's this weird, and it's a great mix here, and the whole all 9 of everybody, because of different skill sets and different places that your shows are appearing.
We're all really talented. I think is what you meant to say.
Especially Amy.
Yes, I was gonna add that. Yes, right. But Amy, it's interesting because we're talking about this whole new world that we're in with streaming and not just that, but like all of it. But you have all these other players into it, and I think Dennis just did a fine a fine way of explaining that whole new world and how that shakes things up. You also experienced something on the other end of it. You were on a premiere in the States. You were in a premiere cable channel, Stars. You had a series counterpart that I thought was magnificent, and every episode seemed to be getting better. And yet, I hate to say it, we would tell because we've talked via Twitter. We were like, hey, this is an amazing series. And people were like, what is it called? Yep. And people were like, what is Stars at some point? So is the downside you've helped make this amazing show and then you need it to get seen?
I mean, the great thing about Stars is that they don't actually care if it's seen. They care if it's good. And so that was really our only bar. But that's really frustrating for me. Because there's probably 2 people in the audience who've seen it. Okay, it's 4. And Simon.
That was like 18.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you very much. They didn't say it was good, by the way. They just said they've seen it. So, yeah. It's Hart, though, by the way. He's told me he really loved it. And thank you for your reviews. They were very kind. But that was the only attention we got, was from Tim Goodman on Twitter.
I couldn't have been the only person who reviewed it. Right?
No. We're 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. But it was all critical acclaim and no audience retention. It's a very heady show. I'm not gonna lie, it's not very sort of like, it's not a show where you watch the first episode and you're like, I'm so invested. You're just so, I think we tingle your brains, but we don't, it's not like a Hart show where we're bringing people in to fall in love with these people. On the surface, it's kind of a cold show. It's very cerebral. There are some awesome twists. And the characters are really, really interesting. But on a network like Stars, it's not a lot of shows get seen. Yeah. And they're driving more and more towards niche markets, and Counterpart really doesn't have a place in that. So it's interesting to see if we get picked up for a season 3. I'm not a part of it anymore. I left for my own stuff, which I can't talk about, aside from Warrior Nun. But it's a little disconcerting because like you put so much effort into it, and you saw how much the actors gave of their souls for a show where they had to play 2 roles, most of them, and for it not to sort of land with an audience, it's really sort of, it's kind of heartbreaking, because you want people to see it because you believe in it, and so for it not to get viewership. Is frustrating. So it's kind of the opposite of David.
Well, I was going to say, David, is that what you were getting at too? Where you're cognizant of this world, and you have you have this show, even in a sort of depleted audience level of networks today. You still have a show. I mean, the ratings are way down for everybody because the pool is so shallow, but it's so whatever. But your show's pulling on these enormous numbers. But so what you're saying earlier was like, I really want everybody to see it, and there's no guarantee if I were to go over and take, say, like Apple Money or something that people would see. Is that what you were getting at?
I don't know what I was getting at. No, I'm suffering from. I want people to see my stuff. I want my voice to be heard there, and there still is a better chance for that to happen on a network, even though most of the stuff gets canceled there right away. But heard in the sense of getting a larger audience. I don't need to be, I want just, am I contradicting myself when I say I want just enough to keep me on the air so I can keep playing it? But bigger is better. It is good to be able to tell your stories to more people, aside from just the ego thing. Aside from people not, it's better for your parents too if they don't get, if nobody asks them, what's that show? Is David okay?
I get that question a lot from my family. So yeah.
On the other hand, the model now is that these people will eventually, everybody in here could eventually see Counterpart, because now they've heard about it and there are people who are saying, oh, it's really great, we should see it. They can still find it. And it takes away the ratings aspect of you have to, if they don't watch it, then it goes away, because you're in a model where it doesn't go away. Right. So is there, as a creators who are working in streaming, is that also part of it too? Like knowing that like a good book, it'll sit on the shelf and someone will eventually find it?
It's great when, years on, people are tweeting or whatever, you can see that people are just discovering it.
Yeah.
You're finding that all the time, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we premiered in January, and there's been an uptick recently for some reason. I think it just showed up on iTunes or something, and you could tell, because like suddenly like people are like hashtagging the show and like just dropping in on my Twitter feed and saying they loved it. But it's great that it's going to have, I think it's the show that will have legs. It's just a matter of, whether or not those legs are enough to stand on for, 3, 4, 5 seasons, or just the 2 that we got out of the gate.
And Graeme, you're in the one here where you're at you're at an ad-supported cable channel, so ratings are still going to matter. But you're on cable, you can do a few more things. How are you finding that? It's like a new world for you.
Yeah, it's new. It feels like more pressure than, Canadian network and BBC America, who are always kind of the, what did they call themselves? The American network with the British accent. It's like they're never going to get far. That was a terrible accent. That was awful. I do better than that.
They were putting your show on Saturday night, so it's different. Yeah.
But yeah, it's the answer really though is we'll see. Like when it comes to getting cuts, we haven't even showed a cut to the network. That's when it's going to get nasty. That's when.
In the
They're
snow?
really high profile, though, don't you think, Tim? Both his shows.
Yeah.
Orphan Black just cut a swath through L.A. Everyone was talking about it, and Snowpiercer is very, very high profile for a whole bunch of reasons.
For a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah, but in some way you were experienced. You were word of mouth through Orphan Black, and now you're. Right, I mean, you were like the little show that could, because it was it was a Canadian show mostly, and Tatiana was Canadian. People didn't know. I mean, maybe Matt Frewer was probably the most famous person in the cast, probably at the time. So you were the little show that could, and now you're coming in as a franchise, basically, like Snowpiercer. Everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
So it puts you in a different spot.
Yeah, thanks.
I was gonna say, I saw your face change as that question was being asked.
I hadn't really thought about it. Yeah, well, at the end of the day, I'm a writer first, and I just like that's if the scripts are coming out good, and I feel like what's on the floor is good. That's where we are right now. Like I still haven't seen a cut. It's it's a tenuous time.
Yeah.
Can I actually? Because I think that is so much of. I don't know if everybody agrees with me, but as a showrunner, it's the writing, and that's all you care about. And people go, "Oh, Monday your premiere. Are you nervous?" And I go, "Oh, it's Monday." I mean, it's. Yeah. I did the script 6 months ago. I did my job 6 months. I try not to quote me on this, but to some extent, if the script is good on a certain level, I don't care if everybody else screws it up, and I don't care if nobody watches it. If the script is substandard, that will haunt me. But if a director comes in and screws it up, I won't be happy. If an actor comes in and screws it up, I won't be happy. If the network doesn't promote it, I won't be happy, but I'll be okay. I'll feel okay about myself. It's only if the scripts, I'm not proud of them, then I'm messed up.
And I wondered also in this sort of, again, the peak TV era, whether it's streaming or not, and maybe Dennis and Hart can talk to this. Because Hart, I kind of really do feel like you're gonna. Something tells me you're gonna end up on a streaming service. I really do. I think your next series will be on that. Maybe it won't be, but.
Thank you. I think.
No, I think no.
Thank you. You're helping me.
I seriously, I would actually like that. I want.
But that's a compliment right now, isn't it? That's,
yeah. Sorry, man. Yeah. I know.
That's my therapist.
I don't mean anything against the networks, but I want you to be on a streaming service and not have commercials and be able to tell whatever story you want.
I think I do too.
Right. And then, but I'm wondering if the downside too, because Dennis, you and I talked about this outside. So you have a new series coming out on Netflix, and one of the things that some of the creators have talked about who are at Netflix, not talked about on the record, but we'll say, is that like
I love Netflix.
right? See, it's your program, but you know. You make 10 episodes, you put all a year or 2 years, whatever it is, into it, and then it comes out on a Friday, and all 10 drop, and then they basically don't talk to you for 2 years.
Well, it'll be we'll drop March 2019. I think that's what the kids say, and they say it's anywhere within 60 days they'll tell me if it's going to go again. Because they'll have all their analytics running, and they'll be like, oh, well, Southeast Asia watched the first 5 episodes, but then they tuned out after this happened, and Germany watched, the first 3 episodes, and then they watched the back 2, and we can't figure that out, but it's Germany, so whatever. But they want, and I know they're talking about
place
this
streaming
inside,
is. It's so much better than the
they won't share that
burden
with
of network
you.
television.
They're just going to go, it's doing good. And then they'll walk away, So it's kind of like, yeah, I get to look forward to this morning of Twitter where it'll be like, what the fuck was that last night? Did anybody see that piece of shit? What the fuck? Werewolves, So we'll see.
Now, Hart, if you did get something on, was that from somebody who did, live on network television where David is now, and I can hear his voice down there laughing at Netflix. But if you were into that universe as somebody who's coming from the opposite, how would you feel about that? I mean, because Moan stretched out 22, 24 episodes, and now you have something where you meet your passion project or not, and then it comes out on a Friday, and you're like, well, they all came out. Did anybody see it?
I'm not sure I would care about that. I'd love to find out if I'm good or if I'm just fast. I know I'm fast and can run a show. And can keep it going. I'd like to find out how good I am. But again, now I sound like I need therapy again. I've been writing books, which is infinitely more satisfying.
You think millions of people watched Bones because it was done quickly?
No. I did. There's. One of the reasons Bones stayed on so long was that it was a machine. It stayed on budget.
There's a lot of machines.
There's a lot of machines that cost a ton of money. Bones was... There's more than viewership kept Bones on.
Go back to your original answer.
He's done with you.
This, by the way, this is about every breakfast or lunch we ever had. I'd like to see what I could do in a different medium. Books are more satisfying. They're not as much fun. Making TV, if you get the right group of people, it actually doesn't even matter if it's good or successful. You're having so much fun making it. And that's how I know I'm not an artist, by the way, because that to me is first and foremost, is let's have a good time making this. And we had a lot of fun on Bones for a lot of years making our goofy procedural show that stayed on the air. That I know that's not, David's much more artistic than I am.
David is shooting Simon darts.
I
now.
would love to see what would happen.
You could make a series. I'm serious. I'm not even joking. You could make a series about therapy. You were just talking so much about it. You could make it. I mean, it seems.
I've never been to therapy. I can't do a thing about therapy. You still have to sell things, by the way. I still go and pitch things in places, and you still have to sell things. I'm not an automatic buy. I'll tell you what. I'm an automatic buy for a pilot script. I'm not an automatic buy to make a pilot or make a series. I've got it easier than a lot of people, but it's still hard to sell things. And I've been around to sell things, and a couple of projects we have decided not to do.
Right. We have decided, right.
Well, that's not as self-serving as it sounds.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is how much money I can't do it for that. Or let's not. we're all adults. Let's not go down that road.
Well, since we did it, let's go this way, Amy. So if you were going to reboot something from the past that's been on, you had a chance to sit there and think about it now. You didn't have to get stunned. What would you reimagine?
There was a show that I loved in the 80s called Voyagers. I don't know if anyone remembers that. Yeah. Which was like this guy and this kid, and they had this little device, and they would have adventures throughout history and correct things that were wrong. And the little light would turn from red to green when they know they fixed time. And it was so precious, and I just want to do that again. I feel like we're in a place now where we need to fix things. And emotionally, that's where I'm at right now.
Love it.
So I would love to do a show like that.
Graeme?
Well, Graeme stole Beachcombers. But it's Beachcombers. I would literally love to do Beachcombers, or and barring that, a real show about BC, about Vancouver, the place I grew up, and actually set a show here with a good, decent budget and make it about the fabric here. It's been done before, but yeah. It would probably have to have some cross-border component, but
Dennis?
I think the easy, quick answer I would go to is The Littlest Hobo, because I love dogs. But there was I think it was CTV did this series years ago called The Star Lost with Harlan Ellison. And it was this obscure science fiction series about this giant ship that was so large that pockets of it had lost contact with each other. And these people were like walking their way through trying to it's fucking Snowpiercer. You motherfucker. You're doing my reboot.
just put a dog in it.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'll do Scooby-Doo, fuck it.
Hart?
There's two shows that I would unironically and happily run at again, and I'll show my age. One was called Then Came Bronson, about a guy on a motorcycle. You really remember that show? I would do that in a shot. The other one is I don't know. In the States, I know nobody has seen it. Maybe some other Canadians saw it. It was a British show, an English show called Lovejoy, about an antique divvy, a guy who knew what things were worth. He had a gift for it. And the stories they got out of that ludicrous concept was I would jump to do a show with that amount of range to it that you could do.
Ian McShane, right?
Yes, yeah. I love that. I love that show as much as I've ever loved anything. Not my wife. I love my wife and children more than Lovejoy, but
But it's stuff.
So close. Saved it.